ever dream of building like a team that could change the world? I bet you probably picture, I don't know, a room full of rock star CEOs and like marketing gurus, right?
Sure.
Well, today's deep dive is going to maybe make you rethink that whole image. We're going to crack open this fascinating lesson about how Jesus built his dream team. And trust me, his picks were far from predictable.
Yeah, it really throws a wrench into our modern ideas of like what makes a tower team,
Yeah.
you know? You think someone trying to start a global movement would go for the most polished, impressive figures, but that's not what we see with the disciples at all.
Right. It's like you got these fishermen, Peter, James, John, and Andrew. They're hardworking guys, sure. But our source material paints them as kind of rough around the edges. Peter with his temper and James maybe a bit self-serving. John, always ready to judge. Not exactly like boardroom material at first glance.
And that's what makes it so interesting. You have to wonder, what did Jesus see in these guys that maybe others missed? It's like he intentionally went for a diverse group, even choosing people who might clash. Like Matthew, the tax collector. Now, back then, tax collectors were basically seen as traitors. They were working for the Roman government, and people often accused them of being corrupt. It seems like a PR nightmare to have someone like that on your team.
True. You would think Jesus would want to, avoid that kind of controversy.
Yeah.
Especially when he was trying to win people over. And then you got Simon the Zealot, who was likely like a radical activist, right? You could almost imagine him as the guy leading protests and, stirring up trouble. How did someone like that fit into a message of peace and love?
And that's where we can start to draw some really valuable insights. You see, by embracing this unexpected mix of personalities, Jesus ended up with a team that had a huge range of skills and perspectives. Fishermen who understood hard work and practicality. A tax collector who, despite his reputation, might have had a knack for finances and organization. And then you have someone like Simon who brought a fiery passion and maybe even some street smarts to the mix.
It's like that saying, if two people always agree, one of them isn't necessary. Maybe those differing viewpoints were actually a strength, not a weakness. It makes you wonder if, modern teams are too focused on finding people who all fit a certain mold, instead of looking for those who can challenge and complement each other.
Exactly. If you're trying to solve complex problems and make a real impact, you need people who can approach things from different angles. Now, this isn't to say we should all go out and build teams of, misfits or whatever, but it does challenge us to think about how we can find and leverage those diverse skills and perspectives within the people we do choose.
This really makes me think about that one project I was working on.
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, we had this team, and everyone on it had a similar background and way of thinking. And we got things done, sure. But looking back, I realized we could have achieved so much more if we'd had people who could, challenge our assumptions and bring fresh ideas to the table.
That's a fantastic example of how these ancient lessons can still be applied today. I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to that experience.
Definitely. It makes you think about how you can, diversify your own networks and look for people who can bring something different to the table, even if they don't, fit the traditional mold. But before we jump too far ahead, there's another fascinating layer to this whole disciple thing that I think we need to unpack. In John 1.3551, our source material points out all these different names and titles used for Jesus. Jesus, Lamb of God, Rabbi, Messiah, Son of God, even Son of Man. It's like they're trying to capture all these different aspects of who he is and what he represents.
Absolutely. It's like they're saying, hey, there's more to this guy than meets the eye.
It's not just about the name. It's about all the different roles and qualities that come with it, right?
Exactly. And it's super relevant to leadership. Think about it. Lamb of God points to his role as a sacrifice, a symbol of humility and selflessness. Rabbi emphasizes his role as a teacher, someone who guides and imparts knowledge. Messiah speaks to his role as a leader, someone who fulfills prophecy and brings about change. And Son of God highlights his divine authority and connection to something bigger than himself. It's a potent combination. And it makes you wonder, what if great leadership isn't about fitting into one box, but embracing the fullness of who you are and what you bring to the table?
That's so true. It's not about trying to be a one-size-fits-all leader, but recognizing that different situations call for different approaches, and that your entire identity, with all its facets, can contribute to your leadership style. But speaking of different roles and approaches, there's this detail in the source material that really caught my attention. It talks about how Jesus gave the 12 disciples the power to perform miracles, what they call apostolic authority. But here's the thing, he didn't give this power to everyone. Why not? It seems like spreading the word would be a lot easier if everyone had that ability.
Right. That's a question that really gets to the heart of how power and authority function even today. Think about it. If everyone had miracle working abilities, wouldn't it become less special, less
Hmm.
impactful? That almost cheapens the idea.
Right. It's like if everyone got a trophy just for participating, the trophy wouldn't mean much anymore.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that this apostolic authority wasn't just like some free-for-all magic power. It was tied to a very specific purpose, validating the apostles' message during a time when people were skeptical of this new way of thinking. It was like a divine stamp of approval, backing up their claims in a world that was used to the old ways.
So it was less about giving them superpowers and more about giving their message weight and credibility.
Exactly. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, we see similar patterns in other stories. Like in the Old Testament, when Moses and Aaron received miraculous powers to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, that power was directly tied to their mission and the need for a dramatic demonstration of God's authority.
So it's like power's most effective when it's linked to purpose.
Absolutely. And this challenges us to think about how we view leadership and influence in our own lives.
Yeah.
It's not always about holding the highest position or having the loudest voice. It's about understanding what makes your voice, your actions, truly powerful and using that understanding to make a real difference. It's about finding your, so to speak, apostolic authority.
I love that. And, it brings us to another really interesting question that came up in the source material.
The source material highlights how Jesus only gave this miracle-working power to the 12 apostles, not to everyone who followed him, not even to those who believed in him.
Right. So why do you think that is? What's the significance of that specific number, that specific group? It's like he's creating this core team, for foundation for something much, much bigger.
Well, this raises an important question about the nature of leadership and delegation. Jesus was clearly intentional in how he distributed authority and responsibility. He chose 12 individuals, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, to carry out this specific mission.
It makes you wonder, why these 12? What did Jesus see in them that maybe others didn't?
I think that's the hallmark of a truly transformative leader. They see beyond the surface, beyond the imperfections, and recognize the spark of greatness that can be nurtured and ignited. It's about believing in people, even when they might not believe in themselves.
It makes you think about how, in a world that's obsessed with, credentials and resumes, we might be missing out on some serious talent. How often do we dismiss people based on first impressions or past mistakes without giving them a chance to really shine?
It's a challenge for all of us, to move beyond our preconceived notions and be open to the unexpected, to the possibility that greatness can emerge from the most unlikely of places.
One of the things that really struck me in our source material was the contrast between the kind of team Jesus built and the kind of team we might assemble today if we were tasked with, changing the world. We'd probably go for the, high-powered executives, the marketing gurus, the social media influencers.
Well, it's a natural inclination, isn't it? We tend to gravitate towards what's familiar, what seems like the most logical path to success. But Jesus' approach challenges us to rethink our assumptions.
Because ultimately, it's not about, titles or credentials. It's about hearts and minds that are aligned with a common purpose. It's about individuals who are willing to step outside their comfort zones, challenge the status quo, and work together to achieve something truly extraordinary.
And that brings us to an important question for our listeners. If you were building a team for a world-changing mission today, who would you choose? Would you go for the obvious choices, the people with the most impressive resumes and the largest followings? Or would you be willing to take a chance on someone unexpected, someone who might not fit the conventional mold, but who possesses a unique spark, a passion, a perspective that could make all the difference?
It's a powerful question, one that I think we all need to wrestle with. Because in the end, the success of any team, any movement, any endeavor hinges on the quality of the individuals involved and their ability to work together towards a common goal.
And that's the legacy of Jesus' approach. He showed us that true leadership isn't about power or control. It's about empowerment and inspiration. It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued, where everyone has the opportunity to contribute their unique gifts, and where everyone is united by a shared vision for a better world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the unexpected disciples, I want to leave you with this thought. What if the key to unlocking world-changing potential lies not in searching for the perfect individuals, but in embracing the beautiful messiness of human diversity? What if the most unexpected, the most unlikely, the most overlooked among us are the ones who hold the keys to unlocking solutions that we haven't even imagined yet?
That's a thought-provoking question, and one that I hope will stay with our listeners long after this episode ends.
Yeah, it really makes you think, like, what could we achieve if we stopped looking for those cookie-cutter perfect people and started recognizing the raw potential that's, hiding in plain sight?
Imagine the possibilities if we shifted our focus from what people lack to, this hidden talents, unique perspectives, and untapped potential, just waiting to be unleashed.
It's like that saying, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Sometimes the people we overlook, the ones who don't fit the mold, end up making the biggest impact.
That's a powerful message, for anyone who's ever felt underestimated or like they don't belong. Their time might not be now, but there is a place for them, a purpose for their unique gifts and experiences.
It's almost like Jesus was playing 3D chess while everyone else was stuck on checkers. He wasn't just building a team for that moment. He was laying the foundation for a movement that would last, well, for centuries.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the disciples themselves. Think about the message they were spreading, a message of love, forgiveness, and radical acceptance. That message was so powerful, so countercultural, that it needed a team who could embody those values, even if they weren't, perfect examples of them all the time.
That's such a good point. It's like their imperfections, their struggles, actually made them more relatable to the everyday people they were trying to reach. You know what I mean? They weren't these untouchable figures on a pedestal. They were real people wrestling with real issues and yet still striving to live out this extraordinary message.
And that's a message that still resonates today, don't you think? We're all drawn to authenticity, to people who are genuine and relatable. And when it comes to leadership, I think that's more important now than ever.
Absolutely. It makes you realize that building a world-changing team isn't about finding a dozen superheroes. It's about creating a space where ordinary people can step up and do extraordinary things, flaws and all. It's about fostering a culture where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to contribute their unique gifts, even if those gifts don't always come in, shiny packages.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on. As you go about building your own teams and pursuing your own world-changing missions, remember the lessons we've uncovered today.
Look beyond the obvious choices. Challenge your assumptions and be open to the unexpected.
Embrace the beautiful messiness of human diversity, and remember that true leadership is about empowering others to shine.
And that's a wrap on today's deep dive into the unexpected disciples. We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.